To get started, I'm Hector Gomez. I'm your town manager for the town of Surfside. As part of our panelist team, I have invited a few of our of your professionals. Our public works director is here, Randy Stokes. We have our planning team. It consists of our planning director as well as our consultant, Judith and Walter. I do have an assistant public works director, Francis Duvall. I have our grants coordinator and procurement specialist, Christina Brown. I have invited the mayor for an opening remark for us, as this was a project that was driven very strong really early on by the town commission, and we're glad to be where we're at now today, as well as if I missed any one of my panelists, of course, Eric, our engineer of record with the Cordino Group, who was tasked really early on to perform a town-wide traffic study so we can start assessing truly what are our scientific deficiencies as it pertains to traffic issues throughout our town. And we can have a sound backup as we embark into actually implementing various types of strategies. So with that, I will hand it off to the mayor for an opening remark from an elected official. And again, if I've missed a panelist, just please feel free to message me and I'll go ahead and add you on. Thank you very much. Mayor, our pleasure.
All right, you guys hear me? Hector, give me a thumbs up. All right. So first of all, thank you so much, Hector, and thank you, Eric, for putting this together. I just want to welcome our community, those that are watching now, those that will be hopefully reviewing this later on. This is a very important item. This is something that I ran on. This is something that really concerned us as residents. This is something that the commission made a priority, and that is pedestrian safety and traffic mitigation in our town. After the collapse of the Champlain, for quite some time, people were redirected through our little streets, and that suddenly turned us into, Byron Avenue became a main artery in Miami-Dade County on the beach side. Not to mention, our town has seen a considerable change. I've been here close to 15 years at this point, but we've seen a massive difference between our demographic has changed. We've seen a lot of children. They're on their bikes, they're on their scooters, they're going to school, they're walking around, people walking their dogs. Even seniors walking their dogs. So there's been a big shift in demographics. And one of the things that I felt was deficient in our town was the walkability aspect. And that is really something that we're trying to address. Unfortunately, we've had lots of accidents, lots of incidents with people on scooters and bikes. And we're trying to mitigate that and create a safer environment and a safer community for everybody. So we can't just go ahead and shut down streets. We can't just put speed bumps. We can't come up with it. And quite frankly, myself, the commission, we're not the professionals in this industry. What is required was for us to do a traffic study, because as we all know, the streets are actually managed by the county, which means if we want to do any sort of changes or propose anything, we need to do this study, which took quite a long time. But I know we've reached the end of that aspect of this project. And with that, we're able to create some sort of design process and submit that to the county. So tonight, I know this is the first outreach that Cordino is scheduled with our community. And the idea is to try to figure out different ways, because it's not just a matter of putting up more stop signs or a circle. The solution has to be, oriented town-wide. It's got to have the bigger picture in mind, and it's got to have the data to back it up. So I just wanted to say thank you to Hector for carrying this project forward. The commission, we get to make a lot of decisions up there, but there are people that actually do all the work. So thank you, Hector. Thank you, Christina. Thank you to all the town staff. And thank you, Eric, for everything that you guys at Cordino Group have done. And we're very excited for this program to move forward and to listen and see how this thing progresses and eventually comes back to the commission as a recommendation with input from the community. So I hope everybody here in Surfside will stay involved. This affects us greatly, every single one of us. Whether you're on Abbott all the way down to Bay Drive. So please stay involved. There's going to be questionnaires going out. There's going to be other sort of community outreach. So please stay involved so we can make sure that we find a solution that makes our town better for everybody. So thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, Hector. Turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I do want to give a shout out and honorable mention that we have Commissioner Fred Landsman as well as Commissioner Marianne Maischeid on this call. And I want to thank you very much for being here, as this was a commission-driven initiative. So thank you very much. To touch base on what the mayor said before I hand it off to the true meat of tonight, there's two things the mayor touched base on. So shortly after this presentation and the town officially finalizes the traffic study, we will do a survey. And the survey is going to engage all the residents and ask specific questions to better understand, now that we know what the traffic study has, what do you see? The survey will help us back up certain cases as we present them to the county, as well as we have the resident engagement and input. And we'll probably run that between December and January. That will lead into a final stage before implementations, which is a workshop, a more hands-on charrette style workshop, so that we can install some of these mechanisms into practicality, see what works, doesn't work on tabletop as an exercise, and then we'll hit the floor running, of course, with implementation strategies. So with that said, I would like to turn this over to Eric. I'll touch base on a few items after he's done. Please allow him to do his presentation, and we will have a question and answer session, which I will go ahead and moderate. We'll do a whole round, and then if we have enough time, we'll do a second lap. But if not, then I'll close it off with, again, some key dates and where we stand. So without further ado, I would like to introduce from the Cordino Group, Mr. Eric C., who will go ahead and present to you our traffic findings and pedestrian safety mitigation efforts.
Thank you, Hector, and good evening. Thank you for attending. I know it's a busy time of the year, so I appreciate you guys attending on this important project. Hector, can you help let me share my screen so I can provide the presentation slides? It's disabled, I think.
Absolutely. Apologies here. Did it open up for you, Eric?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Just want to make sure. All right, here we go. All right, so I have about 40 slides here. I'll go through, step through the process, the intent. We had opening remarks, the project intent, summary of our preliminary traffic data, summary of the preliminary traffic analysis of the results, and most importantly, open this up for Q&A and resident questions and ideas and feedback, which is really important for these public outreach meetings. The project intent, this the town's traffic study, master traffic study, was originally I guess just say last updated was 2012. So 10 years later, we're doing this update in order to, one, update the traffic numbers, see about the traffic operations at key intersections, the speeds throughout the town, 85th percentile speeds. We can see that. Do a safety review to see where are the safety issues and concerns from a crash standpoint. Also look at potential new traffic calming and potential new pedestrian safety walkability improvements. We'll go over all of those items, but that was our intent and objective as we embarked on this project. First thing we do when we do update a traffic study is the townwide traffic study is to collect traffic data. And what you see here is a map that shows you the data that was collected back in September of 2022. We collected manual turning movement counts at 30 intersections, and those are depicted with the blue circles where those turning movement counts were done at key intersections. There was historical manual turn movement counts at the intersection of 91st Street and Collins Avenue, where we had did a signal warrant study at that intersection, so we utilized that data. We had manual turning movement counts were collected at 2 intersections, not only once back in September, but we collected them again on February 7th, 2023, and this was at was when Bay Drive was closed for the park project, so we could determine if we closed Bay Drive, what happened to the traffic operations at the intersection of 96th Street and Abbott Avenue, which is unsignalized, and 96th Street and Byron Avenue, which is a signalized intersection. We also collected data, 72-hour bidirectional volume speed tube counts at 14 locations throughout the town. These are depicted at the red lines you see on the map. These were collected in order to determine what that 85th percentile speed is. 85th percentile speed being the speed that you generally post the posted speed limit at. So that gives you an idea of, are cars going over the speed limit? Are they going under the speed limit? That's a metric that is needed and important when evaluating improvements. In addition, there were historical 72-hour bidirectional speed volume counts also along 88th Street west of Byron Avenue. You see those depicted in the orange lines on the map. Those were done and collected back in 2021 when we did the multi-way stop control analysis study. So all of this here is data that we utilized in our update to the townwide traffic study. Get right into sort of the results of what the operations provided us at the key corridors. Obviously, State Road A1A, Collins Avenue, first being important on the intersections. It varied from level service C, D, and E at those locations. We all know about 96th Street and Collins, this level service E in the PM. PM gets congested, almost 80 seconds of delay at that location. And level service D at a number of the other locations. That's your northbound traffic on State Road A1A. And Harding Avenue southbound, similar, there were anywhere from level service B on one intersection, 93rd Street, all the way to level service F in the PM at 94th Street for the southbound traffic. 96th Street was also looked at closely. We looked at Byron Avenue and Abbott Avenue closely, in addition to obviously Harding and Collins Avenue, which we've already just looked at. The intersections were evaluated with Bay Drive open and Bay Drive closed. There was very negligible and minimal difference. Obviously, the traffic counts were collected at different times. September were adjusted for the peak season factor. It was about 11% because obviously September is still not your peak time. But we did collect the Bay Drive closure at those two intersections in February. But they both were within a few seconds, negligible difference when those traffic counts were collected. Obviously, we did not collect more than one day. The county may ask for additional days worth of counts, but for the one day we did collect traffic counts with the Bay Drive closed, we didn't see an issue with having that northbound right turn closed off and any major impact at either the Byron Avenue and 96th Street and Byron Avenue and Abbott Avenue intersections, which was an important part to our traffic operational analysis. Next thing I'll go over is the vehicle operating speeds along the corridors. What you see here are those 14 locations where we collected speed volume tube counts. The 85th percentile speeds are in the third column right here. Northbound to the left, southbound to the right. They're both really similar in most of these. So as you can see, the bottom two obviously being Collins Avenue, you expect those to be a little bit higher. The 85th percentile speeds along the residential streets were between 20 and 28 miles per hour. Now the posted speed limit, the residential posted speed limit in the residential streets west of Harding Avenue is posted 20 miles per hour. So averaging from 20 to 28, it's 0 to 8 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. We'll go over specifics on the locations that were over the highest over, and as we get into potential discussion of traffic calming measures, we can go over those. Here is I added this in, although it wasn't in our original scope. This is the data from the multi-way stop control project. I still evaluated 88th Street, and so we could see what the street 85th percentile speeds were along there. There is a couple traffic calming measures already on there and installed. The 85th percentile speeds along 88th Street corridor from Hawthorne Avenue over to I think just west of Byron averaged between 15 and 24 miles per hour. So that's only up to 4 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, and some were actually a lot lower. Right around Hawthorne Avenue was 18 or 19, so it's just below the posted speed limit of 20. This table shows you an addition of peak hour traffic volumes on the streets. AM along this column is the third column, and the fourth column. This was remember we took 3 days worth of data, so the average peak hours are shown here, and typically it's between 7 and 9. It's about 7:45 to 8:45 in some locations, 7:30 to 8:30, and then in the evening time 5 to 6, 5:45 to 6:45. But here are the peak hour volumes. These are low residential volumes. They're not really high volumes on the residential streets. Byron Avenue between 88th and 86th, just to show you that's outside the town, but as traffic starts to go northbound into the town, I know there's already traffic calming measures there at 88th Street, but 541 as a peak hour volume is a little higher than some of the other streets. This is important because when you see the requirements for doing traffic calming measures by Miami-Dade County, there's a certain minimum traffic volume that they want to see up to a maximum traffic volume. So the peak hour is an important metric when we decide, as we were indicating, what improvements that we can make. So this is another important table. Again, here's the same table for 88th Street. Again, low volumes as you would expect. Peak hours between 17 and 119 vehicles in the AM and PM peak hours. As I was indicating, and as Hector indicating, there's a criteria in order to implement traffic calming measures. This is what you see here from Miami-Dade County. When municipalities have traffic calming funding, these 85th percentile speeds exceeding the posted speed limit by 5 miles per hour or over are considered to have excessive speeding and can have traffic calming measures installed. If the Miami-Dade County is putting them in, it needs to be 10 miles per hour or greater than the posted speed limits. That's an important distinction as we go through here. And here's the minimum traffic volumes and between 150 and 300 peak hour volume, or 1,500 to 3,000 per day vehicles on those streets. So what I did here in order to see which streets actually meet those metrics, you've got Byron Avenue between 95th and 94th, Carlisle between 94th and 93rd, 91st Street between Carlisle and Byron, Byron between 88th and 86th. That's not in the town. And then similarly on the 88th Street, there is the volume threshold as well. And 88th Street, a couple of streets there between Carlisle and Tickens met that criteria as well. So overall, you can see here the 4 or the 5 or so roads segments that are highlighted in yellow. They have the criteria for the speed limit, and Bay Drive from 96th to 95th, where we looked at the closure, was 5 miles per hour over. Byron Avenue between 95th and 94th was 5 miles per hour over. Carlisle Avenue between 94th and 93rd Street, 6 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. Emerson Avenue, 91st to 90th was 7. And those were the key, at least 4 or 5 that we were looking at. And as far as meeting that criteria in order to, based on speeds, to install various traffic calming measures. And keep in mind, something to think about here as well is when you look at this, there are roads already, and the streets that we collected speed volume data on were typically locations where you could have tube counts laid where there weren't traffic calming measures already there, so you could get a true depiction of whether or not cars were speeding. Obviously, the roundabout at 88th Street, at Byron Avenue, or not Abbott Avenue, I should say. Those actually deter traffic volumes and speeds right away. But so I try to make, you asked why we selected certain ones here, is in order to get a good picture of locations that didn't already have traffic calming measures installed. Here's the speeds along 88th Street. A number of these really 3 or 4 miles per hour over got close. Hawthorne and 88th Street, Dickens Avenue north of 88th Street as well are nearing that 5 miles per hour threshold. What you see here now is we looked at 5 years worth of crash data. But safety review is an important element of evaluating the overall safety for not only vehicular but bicyclists and pedestrians. This was an overall 5-year crash review of the whole town limits. You can see the black limits here that's in Signal 4 Analytics, which is a program. It's geo-based data that's updated nightly at the University of Florida, and that data gets updated. So I did a screening from 9/1/2018 to 9/1/2023, and there were 1,148 total vehicle crashes with 191 injuries and 1 fatal crash at Harding Avenue and 91st Street. The predominant crash patterns were rear end crashes and sideswipe crashes. I didn't want to just stop there. I then looked at, okay, what is the crash data for the streets, the residential streets west of State Road A1A Harding Avenue southbound, so that we could determine what were the metrics then for the crashes that were just in the residential area. And you can see kind of the heat map of where those locations are. That's important too, because another one of the criteria for Miami-Dade County for installation of traffic calming measures is correctable crashes and crashes at intersections. So you can see high locations of crashes along Abbott Avenue in 95th, 91st Street for a stretch, at Carlisle, Byron, and Dickens. Then 88th Street, there's a stretch of crashes as well. The predominant crash patterns were left turn and angled crashes. I did the same network screening for that for those areas west of State Road A1A, and the 102 vehicular crashes along with 13 injury crashes were in the town. It's a significant difference from 1148 to the 102, but still way too many when we want 0 crashes on our roads, especially in our residential neighborhoods. So that gives you a picture of the residential area. So then also I looked at, I kind of took away from the heat maps. You can start looking at like kind of dots as opposed to the heat map. Obviously, it's similar nature. The heat map was created around these areas, but this gives you kind of ideas of where crashes were exactly at in the residential neighborhood. We found 95th Street and Abbott Avenue, Byron Avenue between 96th and 93rd Street. There were still crashes. We found, I moved my way down. Obviously, town is large, so I wanted to really zoom in here. So this is 93rd Street to 90th Street. Again, you can see kind of dots kind of coalescing here at Byron 92nd. There's a few others along here. So that gives you an idea of other high crash or crash locations where they had a number of crashes over this 5-year period. And then to get further more along the southern end of the town, you see here 88th Street, and there's a lot here along this stretch between Froud and Hawthorne, even on low speed streets. So something to keep an eye on and look at as we look at potential traffic calming and walkability, pedestrian safety improvements along the residential streets. Finally, I not only then did, there's a lot of data here, I also then just drilled down even further, and we looked at pedestrian bicycle crashes. So we looked at just pedestrian bicycle crashes And this is what you see here on the map. And this starts to get into there where there are safety concerns then at intersections and road segments from a pedestrian and bicycle standpoint. There, in that same period of time, there were 53 bicycle and pedestrian crashes, along with 44 injury crashes in that 5-year period, which is obviously a high percentage. If it's a pedestrian bicycle crash, you expect 44 out of 53 to have injuries. Predominantly, most of these crash locations were along FTOT state roads. That's along A1A, Harding Avenue, Collins Avenue, and 96. But there are still, you can see some locations within the residential area where we had pedestrian bicycle crashes. Here, I want to talk about recent pedestrian safety, walkability, mobility improvements. The town has made and I've been involved with traffic mitigation improvements since 2015. So over these last 8 years, the town has made traffic mitigation, pedestrian safety, walkability, pedestrian improvements very important. So not only if it's improvements that are being programmed into the budget, capital, or the town's budget, or going after grants. There are projects that have been successfully implemented, including recently pedestrian signalized crossing was installed along State Road A1A and Collins Avenue at 92nd Street. You can see this in this image here that was recently taken, aerial drone image. This pedestrian crossing allows for safer crossings that improved pedestrian safety and mobility along northbound Collins Avenue. In addition, there was recent grants were submitted for along State Road A1A, Harding Avenue, and Collins Avenue at 89th Street, where there are going to be signalized crossings, pedestrian crossings as well. Those are in design. I followed up with FDOT today, and they gave me the update. So they are programmed for construction letting on November 13th, 2024. It's another important part, an infrastructure improvement project for the pedestrian safety. The design's at 90% and expecting construction letting sometime late next year, early 2025. In addition, as additional improvements that were made, obviously crosswalks, when you start to see here crosswalks before and after, they start to fade away and it becomes a liability. And so the town's going through and making these improvements, Public Works Department, to enhance these crosswalks. This is at 95th Street in Byron. Again, crosswalk was placed at 94th and Abbott here as well. These enhanced zebra stripings improve that pedestrian safety for the residents and visitors and tourists and everything in the town. So that's important. In addition, I want to mention there were green infrastructure conversion passive asphalt areas. I know that were recently done and constructed. You can see before and after pictures at 93rd Street and Bay Drive and Emerson Avenue, where some improvements were done. This is flipped, I apologize. Little medians that have green space versus just pure pavement areas. One, it channelizes cars, so it makes it safer for the vehicles, but also it's that additional resiliency and sustainability heat island effect, where you add more green space as opposed to just pavement area. So you can see also at 89th Street, Hawthorne Avenue, and Irving Avenue, additional improvement. This is all important. It's improved improvements to the town's residential streets. I wanted to mention those as well. When you think about traffic calming, there are a lot of different traffic calming measures. I just want to touch on some of these. I say roundabout. In this case, neighborhood traffic circle is another word for it. Reduce travel speeds for intersections. You put a little circle in at an intersection and allow cars to travel around it. It reduces the speed based on diversion of the geometric of the vehicles to move around the circle. Speed humps, you have those in the town at a number of locations that deflects vehicles, lower speeds. Median, what you remember seeing at along 88th Street at an intersection there. keeps vehicles. It's sort of an access management opportunity. It causes cars to veer out, but at an intersection also eliminates certain movements to improve safety at an intersection. Diverters cause a lot of these road closures as well. You see that at 94th and Abbott and Carlisle on 96th Street, and then chicanes and pinch points. This is pictorially some of these same things. Chicane. Here's the closure, a road closure location, speed hump. This again, roundabout, a lot bigger. It's Cutler Bay. It's a lot bigger than the neighborhood traffic circles. And this one here, right, along 80th Street in the town. So I wanted to create a map so that everybody can see where there are traffic calming measures currently installed in town of Surfside. Those are in kind of like a yellowish tan color, bordered with black, the variety of different measures. The green we'll talk about in a bit are some new potential, not set in stone, just potential opportunities for, based on the data, that we could do potential traffic calming devices and walkability location, improved walkability locations. I'll start in neighborhood traffic circles. We have at Byron and 95th Street, Bay Drive and Dickens, and on here at Abbott Avenue and 88th Street. Speed hump, speed tables at Byron Avenue on the 95th, 94th, 92nd, 91st, 90th Street block of Byron. You can see along here, Abbott Avenue, 94th, 93rd, 91st, 90th Street blocks. 91st Street east of Abbott Avenue, and then Bay Drive, 91st Street. Median diverters, Byron Avenue and 88th Street here. You can see that's a little symbol there I used. And then road closures, Carlisle 96th Street up here, full closure. Abbott Avenue and 94th Street, full closure. Abbott and 95th Street partial. Abbott and 88th Street partial, and then 94th Street and Abbott Avenue partial. So those all locations you can see in the green. We'll go over here in a bit. This is based on some of the measurements we saw either from the speed volume data that I had, the traffic safety information, where we potentially could do some potential traffic calming devices, walkability locations. First one's Bay Drive at 96th Street. It's one of the items that we had looked at specifically to see what happens at this location if you did a closure. I already went over sort of the operations at that location. Obviously, you have a new park going in here at this southwest corner. Improvement. It's going to be a destination. What would happen if you just eliminated the northbound right turn vehicles out? Level service difference, like I mentioned before, 96th Street and Byron, 96th Street and Abbott are similar in difference, and the difference in delay is negligible. The 85th percentile speed along Bay Drive does exceed that speed limit by 5 miles per hour. So, we could potentially do a road closure similar to what you see at Carlisle and 96th Street at this location. Again, not set in stone, just one option. Byron Avenue and 95th Street, the north leg. There's a little bulb out here at this location. You can see here in the lower left-hand corner picture. There's an opportunity to, I think, and to improve pedestrian safety is to make this more of a speed table as sort of, instead of just a street level improvement. So that would allow for pedestrians to be elevated and give a little bit more of a safety effort at this location. Past crash history along Byron shows that there's crash history along 96th to 94th. This would be improved pedestrian safety and walkability, and that metric for the 85th percentile speed is met as well here. 95th Street at Abbott Avenue. partial road closure of westbound vehicles on 95th Street at Abbott Avenue. This is an example you can see that's already installed in the town. We looked at the 85th percentile here. There's a lot of commercial traffic obviously coming out of this this parking lot. You could do something similar to, as you can see on this corner, a closure over on this location to eliminate that traffic coming in westbound on 95th Street at Abbott Avenue. There's a past crash history along Byron between 96th and 94th. And this would improve pedestrian safety and eliminate some of the traffic diversion at this location. We'll get into some of the speed tables, speed humps. Carlisle Avenue met the 85th percentile speed between 94th and 93rd Street. It exceeded, that was one of the higher speed limits, 85th percentile speeds over the posted speed limit of 8 miles per hour. It meets the minimum traffic volume criteria for local streets per Miami-Dade County criteria for installation of traffic calming. I have a location here. This is my aerial drone image. It's a tentative location. It's probably going to be mid-block between 94th Street and 93rd Street, but just gives you an idea of that location, potential location for a speed table or a speed hump. Abbott Avenue between 93rd and 92nd Street. A raised speed table, speed hump that could potentially be installed here. Again, location again here's tentative. It's going to be up here mid-block from 92nd to 93rd Street. It does meet the posted speed limit, or it's over the posted speed limit of 6 miles per hour. It meets that criteria, and the minimum traffic volume for local streets per Miami-Dade criteria. It's another option to slow traffic down. You don't want to see, usually it's from 0 to 4 miles per hour. You don't really have too much of a traffic speeding issue. It's can handle through enforcement. You get to be over 4 to 5 miles per hour. It starts to be a concern, which is why the metric, performance metric there at 5 miles per hour is what it is for Miami-Dade County. Byron Avenue and 91st Street is the next location. There was a past crash history along 91st Street. I apologize. I was proposing a raised intersection, be one of the first ones in the town's residential area. You can see in the left-hand picture here, you do a raised intersection that slows traffic as you go through the intersection. And it also allows for, improved pedestrian safety, as well as cars are going at a slower speed. You could put that traffic calming feature. It would extend along the approaches, as you can see, back a little bit. So raised intersection is an opportunity. This meets the minimum traffic volume for local streets per Miami-Dade criteria, and it's also an improved pedestrian safety and walkability improvement at this location. Emerson Avenue, another speed hump location, raised speed table, speed hump. That 85th percentile speed along Emerson between 91st and 90th Street. Again, here would be mid-block, but it did exceed by 7 miles per hour. So I'd like to see that lowered to 5 or less at a minimum, or even lower than that. So that speed table or speed hump location would assist in that as an option. Carlisle Avenue at 88th Street, neighborhood traffic circle. There's sight distance concerns. This sort of was picked up when we did the multi-way stop control study along 88th Street. We noticed if your car is sitting here, really a lot of these intersections, trying to be able to see past either the shrubs or hedges, trees, either location to see cars. If this wasn't an always stop location, there was a concern for sight distance. Putting in, a traffic calm neighborhood traffic circle, and then making maybe some improvements to some of the sight distance would improve this situation at this intersection. This location meets the minimum traffic volume criteria and would also be a pedestrian safety and walkability improvement at this location at 88th Street and Carlisle Avenue. And one of the final locations that I had, again, just these are potential traffic calming devices and walkability locations, is at Hawthorne Avenue and 88th Street. You could do a median separator, a raised diverter at this location, potentially a half circle too, because again, this is a T intersection, so it would be hard to put in a neighborhood traffic circle in order for traffic flow. This could allow for some landscaping improvements. It would divert cars to slow traffic down. It would eliminate eastbound left turns onto Hawthorne Avenue at 88th Street, which would be less number of conflict points for vehicles. Again, with some sight distance issues at this location. Potential entry features, signage, landscaping could be done here. Traffic speeds were lower here, but we have other issues along 88th Street. I had mentioned that there were some crashes along Hawthorne to Harding Avenue along 88th Street too. So some traffic calming improvements would benefit that from that aspect as well. And so that's Hector. That's my last slide at this point. I know it was a little lengthy as we're 6:45 now, but I wanted to make sure and go over all of the items that I mentioned, the traffic operations at the intersections, the vehicular speeds, speed volume data. We talked about pedestrian safety improvements that are either installed or being programmed. We talked about potential our existing traffic calming features that are and walkability features there in the town, and as well as just a handful, 9 or so, of potential improvements that can be made, and we can discuss further that meet certain criteria, whether it be speed, volume, or safety. So I open up for questions.
Eric, thank you so much. If you would
You're
like
welcome.
to stop sharing the screen, and I'll take over, brother. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Stop share. There we go.
Great. So there was a lot of information there. Thank you for covering all the aspects. I think it's really important to note that traffic calming directly correlates to pedestrian safety. The various maps you provided definitely show some areas where criteria can be applied. Perhaps there's some areas where we wish we could implement something, but the criteria are not there. I think now as a community, we will have to engage and see what our toolbox is with these new areas. Definitely, there seems to be a lot of areas for improvements. And I think that's the next phase of all of this, obviously, once we wrap down the traffic study. I'm curious to see how the attendees feel about the presentation, any questions they may have. So what I'll do is I want to open it up. So anyone who wants to speak and ask any questions towards the panelists, towards the Corradino group, please just raise your virtual hand, and I'll go one by one. And we'll do it that way. We'll go through one round and we'll see if we have enough time for additional questions. So I have 2 hands raised. I'm just going to go in no specific order, just as I see them raised. So I'll start with the first one, Gerardo Vidostelgi. Gerardo.
Yes, here.
Beautiful.
Hi. And so I was curious for the presentation. You talked a lot about walkability, which is of course super important, but a lot of people get around town through other means like bicycles and scooters. And I was just going to suggest that when you draw any sort of street closure, like the one proposed for Bay Drive or anything else, could you take into account the need and the desirability, I think, of having bikes and scooters get through? That might also suggest some amendments to things like the street closure at Byron and 88th, which currently doesn't provide any way for a cyclist or a person on a Razor scooter to get through the intersection.
Certainly, thank you for that. And what I would tell you is I know at various locations, and even I think at Abbott and 94th, it's not a large opening. There are openings. I think those can be designed in there to make sure that multimodal pedestrians and bicyclists and other modes, scooters, can get through. That's primarily a closure to vehicular traffic. All right, Hector.
Yes. To add to this, perhaps, maybe not all the streets will meet the criteria for bicycle lanes, but perhaps some perimeter corridors may, and maybe some connectivity across those aisles would be something interesting to look at. So I say let's keep that for the more interactive workshop and see how it applies when we have actual measurements and how things can be applied for February. So good question. I'll move on to Janice Tatum. I'll raise your hand and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hector. I would like a more detailed explanation of levels of service metrics, the D, C, and B. What exactly what is level of service?
Good question. Level of service is an A through F metric based on certain level of delay. And when I say delay, so it's different for a signalized intersection versus an unsignalized intersection. So when you get a level service D, let's say at 45 seconds of delay, when you go to a signal, what time do you wait in order to meet that cycle for you to make that movement? If you're going northbound left at a signalized intersection, let's say it's 45 seconds, that's a level service D. Level service A is 10 seconds or less. That's what you feel when you're at a signalized intersection. And it can get up to 120 seconds, 130 seconds on a very congested intersection, which would be level service F. So that's the amount of time and delay that you get and impact. And it's based on various ranges, 10 to 15, 15 to 25, 25 to 35, or A, B, C, D. Those may not be exact, but that gives you an idea of what the level of service criteria is. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yes.
Thank you. We will go on. Commissioner Marianne Maishai, welcome. Floor is officially yours.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question about electric scooters. Are we, I know you mentioned that you looked into bike crashes. Are we seeing any electric scooter crashes? And are we addressing bikes and electric scooters in the business district on the sidewalks? Thank you.
Good question. And the amount of times I've been in the town just recently, probably in the last 6 months, and I'm traveling the streets, either doing site visits, taking pictures, I see scooters all the time. And when I was on, I think, Byron Avenue, there are gaps in those traffic calming devices, the speed humps, speed tables, speed cushions, pillows, we will call those. And there's gaps. Obviously, that caters to, because if you had it all the way across the road, it's the same ideology of when you have certain traffic calming measures installed and emergency vehicles can't get through. There usually tends to be gap for fire trucks or other vehicles. So I've seen those scooters go through those traffic calming measures. It's not slowing the scooter down, obviously, but it does allow them to go through. So to answer your question, that is always considered when we look at various traffic calming measures. Now for crossings, I've seen scooters then trying to cross 96th Street to on the other side for Bal Harbor at, I think, either that crossing at 80, just west of Abbott Avenue at those crosswalks. And that becomes a more delicate situation. Obviously, there's a lot more traffic along state roads, 96th Street, Harding Avenue or Collins Avenue. So you mentioned the business district. Dedicated crossings, like the pedestrian signalized crossings along Harding Avenue in the business district between 96 and 94. Those are important to have. The improvements that I mentioned, the pedestrian signalized improvements on Collins Avenue, 92nd Street, and the ones they're going to put in at 89th Street are all ways for people to cross those busy streets to get to the destinations, whether it be the commercial business district you mentioned or the beach areas, obviously, and obviously the community center and sooner or later the Surfside Tennis Center improvements and all those locations. So hopefully I answered your question. But we need to take into consideration. Oh, one thing I didn't answer, I apologize. When I did my network screening, I did bike peds, but you can do just scooters. So I can make sure that's evaluated in the final report as well, Commissioner.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I will now invite Mr. Ruben Bravo. He has his hand raised and he's next, and it's yours.
Thank you, Hector. And well, very good explanation. I think it's not that easy to explain a process like this and a study like this. So I have a lot of questions, but one of the questions that I want to throw right now is about the business district, right? I saw in there that one of the ideas is to prevent the traffic from Abbott towards 95th, making a right on 95th Street. So the question is how this is gonna affect the business district, since there's not gonna be many solutions for the cars parking in there in that block.
I think we were talking, I think if I'm getting this right, is the location we mentioned, 95th westbound, right? Hector, is that what he's mentioning?
That's right. That's correct.
So the westbound traffic couldn't go through. So traffic could continue on the northbound street, but couldn't go through westbound towards into the residential area is what we're proposing there.
I believe the answer Ruben, I believe that your options would become northbound and eastbound only. Since southbound is not an option and westbound wouldn't be an option. We would have to evaluate the consequences of that closure and what it would mean onto that northbound and eastbound. Right now, I think all we have is that there's a certain level of criteria that meets that we can do some traffic modifications there. But I think now we have to venture into the impacts if we were to do that specific modification.
Thank you.
Ruben, was there any other questions you had?
No. I just wanted to ask that question. I do have a comment about the traffic circles. There's some studies that show that the traffic circles are not that effective. And I just came back from Starbucks in this block, and there was a terrible congestion at the traffic circle on Byron and 95th, to the point that I was about to call police to do something in there, because it's not easy. The traffic on Byron and 96. So people tend to just stop on the circle, preventing others getting in. And that creates another set of, situations there. So I wonder if there's other alternative to traffic circles proposed in here.
And Ruben, certainly there are, if I may, Hector. There are other opportunities to do other types of traffic calmings for slowing traffic down. One of them being, I know I introduced a new traffic calming, which would be a raised intersection. That's another way to slow traffic down. That may not be the circle involving a circle in the middle of the intersection, but also have a deflection vertically to allow cars to slow down at an intersection and in that manner as well. So that's, again, not the only tool in the toolbox, but certainly another alternative to a neighborhood traffic circle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bravo. Next hand we have up is Clara Diaz-Leal. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So it would seem that Ruben, and I don't know his last name, but Ruben set us up pretty quickly here. A great hit off this ball, off this tee, right? So I live on the corner of 95th and Byron, and that is ground zero for terrible traffic. And of course, he just said I went to Starbucks, and on my way back to wherever I live, I cut through here, right? Which is the norm. So I think we need to talk about not only walkability, but the cut through traffic and the lack of quality of life as it relates to balancing it out across the board here is significant. So when you speak about oh, maybe we need to close off Bay, or, we have created a funnel. So whatever you think about to a solution here, the funnel effect, if you could figure out how to, get rid of it, that would be ideal, right? But sort of, we've already closed enough streets and done enough to create the funnel that you either go all in. At one point, we had recommended right turn only on 96 and Byron, so that westbound traffic wouldn't have to go away, which is, I think, in line with what you were saying at 95th and Abbott, that no westbound traffic. I mean, to the extent that you can keep that top of mind, so that the people who live on Byron, which is, a pretty big street, lots of houses, and the disenfranchisement of these houses, I think ideally that would be a starting point. It's nice to walk, but how about trying to live here?
Yeah, I'm sharing, Hector, too. I had did a video, and again, obviously, this is not during peak time, but you could see this is just a short video clip of Byron from like 93rd to 96th Street, and you see the number of traffic calming measures that are installed here. Certainly, I understand the challenges for any of these improvements that I have proposed. But these were certainly just presented in a way that are potential options and are not final decisions. We're getting close to the intersection with the roundabout, and it is important to consider cars as you get closer to the circle at 95th, because the northbound left turn lane, obviously 96th Street is extremely busy most of the time, and the traffic circle, even at this time of the day, which I think was during the day on a Thursday or Friday at noon, you already seeing 2 or 3 cars going through the circle. Plus, you see cars, bikes, I think pedestrians and scooters. And so I only wanted to share this. It's sort of a virtual walkthrough. Claire, I know you live along 95th Street, just to show the stretch of corridor and the operations. And that one location we had mentioned, the raised speed table potentially at this crossing here, and then as you get here, obviously the lanes are here. You neck down up at this location, which is another traffic calming feature. But then you've got the speed humps, and again, this is where I saw scooters going in between these 2 traffic calming features right there. Then you get up to the intersection at 96th Street. So sorry, Hector, I just wanted to show this. It's sort of, as we do a virtual meeting, right? It's a little easier to see certain things from a aerial drone video. And again, this isn't during the peakest time, but it did show you that corridor. So I guess.
Thanks, Eric. I do want to take the time and just so the traffic study, what we do is we see where we're statistically the numbers back up where their issues are. There's really no firm recommendations as the town should do this coming out of this. I think that's the discussion that we are to have. And right now, let's evaluate the numbers for what they say. I think every implementation we do should have some level of backup. And right now, this is what we're doing. We're just looking at the backup behind where areas that do need help. Just want to make that note. Clara, did you have any other questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I totally understand where the numbers are. I was part of the last traffic study and committee. The numbers are there for particular streets, understood. Putting a bump will not fix it. The fact that we funneled all traffic to go in one direction is the problem. So to the extent that we find solutions, we can't put another Band-Aid on. I would love for this to be more cohesive, and so that the solution isn't just another speed bump, so that all 5,000 people who want to cut through are going through there a little slower on the speed bump. You get what we're doing? That's what we keep doing instead of finding a solution. And so I just urge you to look at this differently, because if we continue to close other streets and not address the cut through, we will have done nothing, because lots of families walk through to go to different temples and whatever, and to the business district from 95th and Byron and in this area. It's still not going to be safe, just a little slower on the speed bumps.
Thank you, Clara. I'll invite our next question from Mark Slatko, and the floor is yours, sir.
Hi. I actually I'm happy to follow Clara. You can hear me, correct?
Loud and clear. Yes, sir.
Follow Clara about these the cut through. I live on the 8900 block of Carlisle, and ever since the tragic collapse of Champlain and the subsequent closure of Collins Avenue for months, if not more, we taught motorists how to avoid traffic on Collins. We gave them a lesson every day, and they started cutting through our neighborhood, and they would come up 88th and make a right turn at 88th in Carlisle. And out of frustration of having just been stuck in traffic for so long, they would come flying up 88th northbound 89th and continue on. I'm surprised that this study, and I thank you for this workshop, it's very important, didn't focus a little more on that and highlight it and note it as a real problem area. This is the gateway to Surfside from the south when anytime there's a backup on Collins. And again, our street, Carlisle, is the first street that gives people an opportunity to start heading north again. So I would hope that moving forward, we could kind of take a few steps back and look at this part of the town, the south section on Carlisle in particular. And I know the traffic circle that Eric pointed out looks good, but I don't know what that really is going to do to once people make that right turn and start heading north. So I would hope that we can look at that a little more, because it's a huge problem here. We or fear for our lives every time we walk our dogs and walk around.
Eric, I know you touched base on that intersection, specifically of that intrusion avenue to the south on Byron, 88th. Can you touch base on those numbers and what your study found there?
Yeah, let me can I share again, Hector?
Please. While you share, I don't know if we propose any alternative recommendations there, but obviously that is an intrusion point. Maybe there's a way we could look at that.
Did you guys see that? I just want to make sure I got the right thing.
Yes. That's one of them.
We're stopping.
Yes. And so
let go.
I think one location, and this
Steven.
is
Steven.
can you guys hear me? Yeah.
I can.
Okay. So
I'll mute you for a second, Mr.
And I wanted to so the 88th or 88th and Carlisle here circle, certainly we could move that circle along, the speeds just weren't along 89th as much as they were still on 88th Street. 90th Street presents an interesting situation where you have a lot of offset streets. A raised intersection potentially along 90th Street down to Carlisle around there, making it slower traffic as well, and deter people is another way to eliminate some level of intrusion as well. So I see that it's not along 90th and 89th Street. So those are great observations and can be considered as well through potential other measures. And what I do want to mention too, Hector, if I may, is wasn't a part of the overall presentation, but I do want to talk about the one-way pilot program that occurred back in, I think it was 2017. Just want to refresh memory. This was done as a way to look at potential one-way pilot program along 90th Street and 89th Street. And traffic data was collected on not only 90th Street, but 89th Street. And what we found was it was done before the pilot and after the pilot. And 90th Street traffic volumes eastbound went down or increased 39%, and westbound traffic increased only 25% on 89th Street for the one-way pilot program. But that allowed additional street space to be created for repurposing of lanes for other modes of travel and for improved pedestrian walkability and safety. That's not to say you have to do the one-way pilot program or implement one-ways. I did want to mention that because that affects 89th and 90th Street. We also, at that time when we looked at this, we also looked at the right of way, right? Because that's important. If you do a one way, what happens when you do a one way along there? The street right of way on 89th and 90th are both 50 feet with 27-foot street widths. Existing two-way section, kind of 2 lanes, 13.5-foot wide lanes. You could go with a 15-foot wide travel lane with 12-foot multimodal shared walking path or bike path. Those are all opportunities. It's not a recommendation here. I wanted to just refresh everybody's memory on, this traffic mitigation program has been going on since 2015, and there have been a number of steps that the town has gone through to look at. This is one of them. In addition to 2 additional options here, if you did at 90th Street, another option was to do 90th Street one way on Harding Avenue, or 90th Street east of Harding Avenue, and putting a median separator. I just wanted to refresh our memory, Hector, on some of this stuff. I know I didn't answer gentleman's question with the exact other improvement, but there can be improvements along going back to the overall map along either 90th or 89th Street as well. Can be considered at some of these offset streets present certain challenges as well. That's all. I'll stop sharing, Hector.
Thanks. I saw from those numbers quick, I saw that you get more of an impact from the southern side than the northern side. We'll revisit that. I'm curious to see those numbers closely. Mark, before I move on, did that address your concerns? I see there's some concerns that we'll have to address as we proceed.
Thank you for letting me jump in again, because that's one thing I forgot to talk about. I remember the charrette we've been here a long time, the charrette from years ago. And when I was very intrigued by the sound of one-way streets. I don't understand why they were done west and east. Why weren't they done north-south, like to show people like an example of what a residential block could look like with, medians and sidewalks and, a pilot program to give like a model of what, how wonderful that would be. And again, I would gladly have to drive around an extra block to come back down one way to get to my house if I had to, if it would make our streets safer. But I just don't understand why it was done east and west, and wondering hopefully we could do, some sort of model street in the future, show people how great it could be to have a one-way, walkable, safe residential street in Surfside.
Thanks, Mark. I will now invite Rita. You're next, Rita.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. Oops, nope. Hello, can you hear me?
We gotcha, yes.
Perfect, okay, sorry about that. My question is about crosswalks and the wisdom of allowing right turns on red at a crosswalk. And I'm specifically referring to the crosswalk at 96th and Harding. The cars coming from Harding onto 96th, and then the cars from 96th onto Harding, they just seem to whip around to the right and don't pay any attention at all whether or not the pedestrians have the right of way. And I've found it I don't know if that's included in the scope of your analysis, but I was just wondering if that's been looked at.
Rita, just to be clear, you're talking about if you're on 96 heading eastbound and you're on Harding Avenue and you want to turn south into Surfside through downtown?
Well, I'm just walking across the street from the downtown at that crosswalk at 96 and Harding, just to get to the, like, say for instance, to go to the Bell Harbor Shops, that busy crosswalk right there that runs right in downtown there. It's at 96th and Harding, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sharing this now.
Right before you, on 96, right before you get to Harding.
It's that right turn lane, the eastbound right turn lane there, right?
Correct. Either going right onto Harding or from Harding onto 96, right there. See the car turning?
Yep.
They just whip around. It doesn't matter whether pedestrians have the right.
Yeah, the pedestrian was crossing right there too. You just missed him. Obviously, you had to wait. But
look at this right here with a taxi or that yellow vehicle. Well, I think the issue there is that the vehicles don't stop at the stop bar and they stop closer to the crosswalk, because maybe something there could be as simple as no turn on red. DOT is evaluating this intersection. They are installing an additional pedestrian phase there, where that means that all the vehicles now have to wait an extra amount of time for the pedestrian phase, a pedestrian only phase in the signal loop. There is an incorporation of a south sidewalk as well, a crosswalk. But I can see that taxi or that yellow vehicle now probably is going to scoot in a little bit more and then cause the issue that you're probably mentioning. I think that can be mitigated through some items, some signages at this, and some enforcement, perhaps with no turn on red and,
Yeah, that
and
would be great.
enforcing that.
Because frankly, I was there the other day and a car was trying to wait for me, but the car behind him was so impatient, he kept honking him. And then that car got nervous and then decided to speed and turn right just to get the other car off its tail. You know, meanwhile, I was in the process of starting to cross the road. So yeah, no turn on red would be great, or anything else you could do that would make it safer would be wonderful.
Okay, thank you for bringing that point up. That's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you
Rita.
so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. I have so at this point, let me go over all the hands raised real quick to make sure I didn't miss any. I have Maria. Maria, you have your hand raised, so I will invite you to speak shortly. Then I have one more hand that's a repeat hand, which is and then I believe at that point I'll conclude the question and answers and I'll provide a closing. But Maria, I would like to invite you now to the conversation.
Yes, hi. If you could put that picture that you had with the intersection of 96 and Harding on the screen.
Yep, I'll share that again. Hang on a second. Okay, back to our virtual walkthrough.
Oh, good frame.
Okay.
Okay. The cars are going east on 96, but they're turning right. But on that corner, there's not a pedestrian crossing. They have it blocked.
Not yet. There will be, as part of the.
Oh, they're going to open it again?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
So are we talking on the side? Are we talking about the south leg, Hector?
Yeah.
Yes, the south part.
Okay.
Yes, because the reason that was closed was I used to work in Bar Harbor. There used to be a lot of accidents there. People crossing and cars turning. So they decided to take away the crossing on the south side of the intersection.
And what happened, it was DOT starting January, they're going to have this really big project on the entire Harding Avenue from this intersection all the way down to 61st Street in Miami Beach. And they evaluated all the intersections and evaluated certain intersections for safety. And they've recognized that this specific intersection, even though it does not have a crosswalk anymore on the south side, there is still a lot of illegal crossing there. So people still try to cross there at their own risk, and there's still been continued accidents because of that. So what they are trying to incorporate is a crosswalk there. But what's different now is an actual pedestrian loop. And all that means is that at one point, all the four intersections will have a stop, red, to allow for all around pedestrian mobility. And that loop will be an extra 25 seconds or 30 seconds in the entire cycle time, but it's meant to alleviate that safety item. That's the way we have it understood from DOT.
Will they be doing the same thing on 95th and 94th? Because when you are on 95th and you're trying to make a right, the people are crossing.
That one is that the issue there is, as well as there's the issue there is that pedestrians and right turn and green are sharing the same loop.
Correct.
And you have to create two loops, one for pedestrians and then one for the turning. That, and accompanied to what Rita mentioned regarding no turns on red, would be the mitigating efforts there. So we are in discussions with DOT, well, the county, because this would not be DOT, the signals, there will be the county, but it has to be approved by DOT to implement something like that sooner. 95th Street and 96th Street will be implemented with a new crosswalk.
That's just it's going to be a big backup on the 95th and 96th Street.
The concern was raised. Yeah, the concern was raised. Then now let's take it a step back. The backups on 96th Street, we cannot ignore the elephant in the room. There's a new parking garage on 96th Street that fully exits and enters from 96th Street. Unfortunately, that created a big burden onto 96th Street. That is just that reality. What does that mean to the Harding Avenue 96th Street intersection? Um, it's 25 more seconds, but does it make it more safer for pedestrians? It's something to outweigh. What we left off with DOT was that once the crosswalk is installed, we will reevaluate in 6 months of use to see how effective it was. And if in 6 months of use is the then we will reconsider the option. But for right now, because it's part of the construction, they will install it with a evaluation at 6 months to see how it's performing.
Because you know that people are going to cut behind CVS on Abbott, and they're going to end up on 95th, and they're going to take a right, and they're going to end up in front of Clara's house again.
Well, that's unless they want to do a U-turn back and do an end of the loop. But what you mean is they're going to go down Abbott and then try and go into Harding. That's interesting. We'll have to see what that means, And does that mean that perhaps on Abbott we have to do that and turn that on Abbott and 95th on eastbound only, not a westbound? I believe that was one of the items reviewed at this. So that way you keep commercial strictly commercial and mitigate the intrusion. Because one of the big issues on 95th and Byron is that intersection is hit from all ways, 3 ways. But perhaps if you mitigate it only from 2 ways, you can mitigate some of that intrusion in that intersection, if that makes sense.
Okay.
We're going to have to walk that one closely. I would agree, though.
Thank you.
And keep in mind, none of this is final. The only thing that is final is the DOT-led projects, which obviously that's one of them. Everything else that we're recommending here is we still have to discuss it together as a community.
Okay.
So
thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. At this point, I believe I covered all the hands. I have Commissioner Maishai's hand. I will recognize her. Commissioner, did you have your hand up?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's raised probably. Okay, it's fine. Let me do something. Let me lower all attendees' hands. So no hands are up. If anyone has any last comments before we close this, I will welcome it now. Beautiful. We have 2 hands, and I'll close it at that. We'll start off with Clara. Clara, please, floor is yours.
And I wonder if this press. So when the school was built out, there was discussion about the stop sign that's at the alleyway and exit, right? Because it's expected mostly that it would be a lot of walking and what have you. But the reality is we have a lot of children. It's a great school. Lots of people bring them, etc. But the cars need to go somewhere. And to the extent that not everyone lives in town, which they do not, they're going to want to leave somehow. So unfortunately, if you look at that particular stop sign and it has a right turn only there, that forces all of that traffic to go back into the community versus making it left hand only. Maybe you could do it if you're concerned about traffic in perpetuity with a police officer there, or within certain times like they have at different places, but that they would be forced to go left. And if they go left, they'd be going east, they'd be going towards Collins. And at that point, if you live here, you kind of loop around and come right back in, which is no biggie. I have to do that. I live in a one-way. But if you don't, you're already on the path to go in a different direction versus being forced back in. That's a daily backup for us. That is daily. And it's exactly at the same time every single day, because that's when we drop off kids. So we get hit twice. So I would love for you to address that and perhaps put a fix to that while you're.
Okay. Eric, let me take that one on. Clara, just to be clear, you're talking about 95th Street between Collins and Harding?
Yes, it is the alleyway right behind the shul where the small parking is. Right there is, I believe, considered the, where the kids exit school and the mom line up to pick up the kids. In fact, since we have the Collins side blocked off the whole lane, that might be a way to loop them around, right? So it avoids traffic. It's been closed forever. And that could be like a direct circle, right, to get them out. I'm just being creative. I know my kids went to school in a private school, same. And we had to go wherever they told us to go. It's not like I could do a free for all. They had an officer there and they told me where they wanted me to go. And it was to avoid all of Miami Shores being consumed by vehicles going in every direction. I just think we could do better.
You're talking about that specific time when the school releases, then maybe some
Yeah.
coordination efforts there. Yeah, I think the implementation there would be just an officer. It wouldn't be more of a traffic change or signal change, because once you relieve from the alley onto that 95th Street, you can go left or right. It's just during that specific time, there should be someone signaling you can only go a certain direction. Interesting.
As right hand only. So
Good point.
I just didn't need to be there because first of all, they want to go through, they want to cut through. So you're giving them an open invitation to let's go across Harding, which is already busy enough, and then go into the community and then fix in Byron instead of going out to Collins and staying on the main thoroughfares, which is where traffic should be.
Okay. Thanks, Clara. I got you loud and clear. I think it's something definitely more of the police department side, but let me take that. Let me take that point into a different conversation. Okay. Janice Tatum, this would be the last question we take today. So I will invite Janice Tatum. I believe the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Hector. I just wanted to comment as someone who rides their bikes daily with their kids back and forth from school. I think, I'm supportive of any of the traffic calming things we can implement. I think there was a few comments that it's not so bad when it's only 24 miles an hour. We're not quite up to 25, or we have this 5-mile bumper. I don't think any bumper is acceptable in a residential area. I mean, the streets are narrow. The cars like to crowd us on bikes. So keeping the speed limit down is a priority. Keeping it under 20, the speed limit. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the point, Ms. Tatum. At this point, I will, let me see how there you go. Apologies. Just a few last words, Eric, if you want to close it off and then hand it off to me, and I'll close off tonight, please.
No, of course. I appreciate everybody's comments. I made notes along the way, and now this is being recorded, so we'll make sure and capture all that. And next steps is finalize the report, button it up, and then get it in draft format. Obviously not make it final. We have we have a survey, right? I'll leave that to you, Hector, and what you're going to do on that end before we have another workshop, and then we make the report final. At this point, we're in the midst of kind of finalizing things. There's sections that were brought up today, or items that were brought up today we'll address certainly before we get the final draft together, so that we make sure we're capturing the feedback. And it's certainly the more feedback we get, the better. I'll turn it back to you, Hector.
Thank you very much, Eric. Panelists, thank you very much, everyone, for being here, and obviously your attendees. This is being recorded. We will preserve this file. We will have it posted on our website, as well as through a digested email blast. So, because I think a lot of rich content was discussed in this meeting. To touch base on the next two items is that the traffic study is not finalized yet. This was one of the main last components, which was a public outreach that will be incorporated. So that way it adds a bit of a recommendation, or it discusses various of the proposed recommendations with how there's a resident engagement factor and how the residents felt about it. It helps us paint the full story in a document, in a technical document. So that will be wrapped up sometime in December. Am I correct, Eric, with a head nod?
Yeah, towards the end of December, end of the year.
In the meantime, what we will do is the next phase is that we will have an online survey. It will be deployed through many mechanisms, so you'll be able to capture it somewhere. And we urge every resident to participate in the survey, because it ultimately tells us how do you feel about certain types of modifications, so that it helps us prioritize what the community truly needs. Now, not from a statistical standpoint, but from a bias. This is your community. What do you feel works and doesn't work? This is what's going to help us lead us into a February workshop, where we're going to sit down with more of the toolbox that we obtained from this traffic study, so that we could create prioritizations and recommendations of what we should implement, what we feel work for us, and what doesn't work for us. Because out of that, then we're going to go to the county, and then tell the county this is what we're going to do, and then we're going to start doing things. So that is the time frame as it's laid out. So I will say thank you again to everyone. If you have any questions, please, my team is here. Reach out to us. We want to engage. We want to hear what you have to say. And ultimately, I wish everyone a happy holiday season. And we have a condo question and answer on December 5th. That's going to be hosted by the mayor, but he's going to be moderating our featuring guest, which is our building official, our town planner, as well as myself, just to go over some relevant topics pertaining to the condominiums, as well as projects in the look ahead and how they can impact condo residents, and ultimately just trying to get some more information out there. As the goal of all of this is, let's get information out there so we can inform the residents as best as possible and work together. So with that said, I will close this off. I want to thank again everyone for being here, because this was very valuable, and it really, I feel it served its purpose very well. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great night.